east. He attacks Zenobia's forces in like western Syria. They're defeated. Zenobia herself tries to escape by riding on horseback alone through the desert to get to Persia. She is surrounded and taken captive. And then she's paraded through the streets of Rome in chains and subjected to all sorts of humiliation. But this is all restored to imperial control. And then he takes the Gallic Empire back too. How does he do this? Well, he takes a big army, he goes into the Gallic Empire, he sits down across from the Gallic Emperor, his name is Tetricus, and he says, all right, Tetricus, you can see my army is bigger than yours, I'll make you a deal. You come over to my side, and we won't kill anyone. Tetricus says, that sounds great, except Tetricus has neglected to inform his army. So Tetricus goes over to Aurelian's side, and none of his soldiers do. So a big battle ensues due to stupidity, but Aurelian wins. So the Gallic Empire is whole again.
And then he kills him for being stupid.
Tetricus? I think he actually lets Tetricus go into peaceful retirement at a farm somewhere. So apparently you are not punished in the Roman Empire for being stupid, you are merely punished for being emperor. So, by the third year of Aurelian's reign, he has successfully undid all that shittiness that we've been talking about and restored the empire to a whole. He then has to deal with a problem in Rome. So one of the things that was going on during this period was that there were serious problems with the coinage, where the percentage of silver in the Roman silver coins was getting lower and lower until finally it was like 5% silver, 95% pig iron. And no one wants to, if you hand someone a coin that is 90% silver, and then hand the same person a coin that is 5% silver, not only can they tell the difference, but they're not going to accept it for the same worth. So this was not as much of a problem as it sounds, because a lot of people in the Roman Empire didn't use coins, but it was an issue for the government, because the government did. So Aurelian decides to get his coinage reform on, and lessen the prevalence of this. However, there is a group in the city of Rome itself that is opposed to this, and it is, of course, the coiners, the head of the imperial mint. And they are upset because one of the reasons that the coinage has been debased is because they have been used to, say, when the coin is supposed to be 50% silver, taking about 25% silver for themselves and then putting 25% in the coin. And Aurelian says, well, you can't do that anymore. And the coinage reformers, or the coin makers, get really upset and lead what can only be described as a quixotic revolt against the government of the empire, where a bunch of coiners take up arms and attempt to defeat Aurelian. But as we've seen, Aurelian doesn't put up with a bunch of shit, he kills them all. So that is done. He also builds a new city wall around the city of Rome, he successfully reforms the coinage, I should say. And then finally, toward the end of his reign decides to start promoting a new religion, because he doesn't have enough to do. So he proclaims that the cult of Sol Invictus, the invincible sun, will henceforth be religion throughout the entire empire. There were too many gods at this point. There were too many competing schools of religious thought, and Aurelian wanted there to be one particular deity that everyone in the empire could look up to. And so, of course, he identified that deity with himself. So his coins would have him and the sun god like holding hands and say the invincible sun underneath it, much like Aurelian himself. He probably would have done more. He's gearing up for an invasion of Persia. But then what happens, of course, he is killed by his troops. In this case, you would wonder why they would do this, because Aurelian is a really brilliant commander and is very popular with the soldiers. Well, it happens by mistake, sort of.
He's like, I'm sorry, it's such a habit. I see.
One of his secretaries is a slave who had lied to Aurelian about a fairly minor issue. And Aurelian, it is widely known, does not, put up with it. Aurelian doesn't operate under like the strike system. Basically, if you slip up with anything, he'll have you put to death. So this slave knows that he will probably be killed for whatever it was that he did. I don't remember exactly, it was probably like stealing some gold or something. So he decides to forge a list of prominent Roman officers and then hand it to them, claiming that Aurelian is going to have all of them killed. So while Aurelian is in his tent, they ambush him. I think he actually manages to fight some of them off, because he's so cool. But they eventually kill him. swiftly find out that this was a forgery, kill the guy that gave them the note, and then declare Aurelian a god. Everyone really regrets this. Aurelian is succeeded, for irony's sake more than anything, by an aging senator named Marcus Claudius Tacitus. Tacitus is notable for one and only one reason, which is that you may have noticed his name is the same as Tacitus the historian. Well, Tacitus the emperor noticed this too. So he established libraries all throughout the empire with the works of the historian Tacitus in them, which is why we have more of Tacitus' stuff than we do for most Roman historians. He lives less than a year, killed by his soldiers. Back to Rome, replaced by his brother Florian, who is pretty much able to keep the throne warm for the next emperor before he too is killed, and then finally we get this guy named Probus. Probus is Aurelian's lieutenant and right-hand man. He rules for 6 years, defeats some more barbarian incursions up here on the northern frontier. Then, of course, his troops kill him, and you wonder where this is ever going to end. Probus is replaced by Carus. Carus is campaigning against the Persians of the East when he is, of all things, struck by a bolt of lightning and killed. One of the history books I read suggested wryly that this bolt of lightning was probably forged in the soldier's armory. So he's dead. His sons replaced him. They are, in turn, Carinus, because Romans were not very imaginative when naming their children, and Numerian. Numerian also dies within a year of acceding to the throne. I think in his case, he falls off his horse or something. So he wasn't killed by his soldiers, but he does die. And then his troops proclaim this fellow Diocletian emperor. You may have heard of Diocletian. We're going to talk about him for a while. When Carinus' troops find out that Diocletian is emperor now, they say, well, I guess, fait accompli, might as well acquiesce to it. And they kill Carinus. So Diocletian is now emperor. Diocletian is an intelligent man, and he's been alive for probably 40 years or so by this point. And he takes a look at the situation. He thinks to himself, I really don't want to die. So how can I simultaneously be emperor and alive? Which is a trick that most of the Roman emperors in this period have not yet mastered. So Diocletian decides to set up a major series of reforms that will finally bring all this crazy foolishness to a close and let the Roman Empire survive for another 200 years or so. By the way, just checking your dates, Diocletian accedes to the throne in 284. The Western Roman Empire is dissolved more or less in 476. So we've got another about 190 years before this whole thing tanks completely. How does that happen when things have been going so badly? Well, Diocletian is a smart guy. He changes some stuff. His big innovation is he decides that the reason that the emperor keeps getting killed is because the empire is too big, right? So you'll have, like, the emperor's off in France or something, and someone invades in Persia, and the soldiers in Persia are like, where is the emperor? Well, better make one. So they declare some other guy emperor. And then these two emperors have a falling out. One is killed, the other is replaced. So Diocletian decides that he's going to institute this thing called the Tetrarchy, which means rule of 4. Instead of there being one emperor, there will be 4 emperors. And this way, no problems will ever break out again. So the empire is divided into roughly fourths. There are 2 Augusti, which are senior emperors, and 2 Caesars, which are minor emperors. And the idea is that the Augusti rule together, and then when they retire, because they intend to retire and not be killed, they will be replaced by their Caesars, their junior emperors, who will then become the new Augusti and appoint lower emperors. So the idea is fairly solid. It especially works under Diocletian, because Diocletian is, in effect, sole senior emperor, but manages to enlist the support of his 3 best generals. He also does some stuff with coinage reform, which we won't talk about, but it doesn't work well. So Diocletian, after a reign of about 21 years, in 305, decides it's time to see if the Tetrarchy works in practice. He's at this point probably 60 or 70. So he declares that he is going to abdicate. Note